Hello. I have to say that I found it difficult to do an introduction for Tudor Pelagos, but here we go. So this is a watch from Rolex's sister brand, Tudor, that is in many ways more technically innovative than the Submariner and even, say, the Sea Dweller. But the Pelagos is a tool watch and it's priced accordingly, with its price being about half that of the retail price of a Submariner. Well, good luck finding a Submariner anywhere near its retail price. So the version here is the Pelagos left-hand drive, so called because the crown is on the opposite side of the case to where it would normally would be. And this is because the watch is intended to be worn in the right hand. But many people, myself included, like the idea of a right-handed watch on your left hand because it prevents the crown digging into the back of your hand. So where should we begin? Well, let's unbox it, shall we? So here we go. First things first, let's get rid of the outer sleeve. And now we're into the cardboard box with the Tudor Shield logo on it. So opening that up, and we've got another little layer of protection before we actually get to the box with a Tudor Shield again, in which the watch is. There you go. So the presentation of the watch here is pretty nice. And underneath the watch, we've got the instruction manuals and the guarantee card. There you go. And in the little cubby hole, just up the top there, you've got the spare links, as you can see, and you've got the rubber straps that come with the watch as well. So one of the straps is a normal size, and the other one is concertinaed so that you can use it in diving, though that's the one that's still in the box and I haven't picked it up here to show you. So onto the watch itself now. One of the first things that I noticed about the watch is how light it is relative to its size. That's because the bracelet and case are made of titanium, and so it's a lot lighter than you might expect for the size of the watch. That also explains why the watch has a darker grey colour than you would expect if it was a steel watch. While the titanium is more susceptible to scratches, it is a durable material, and while lighter than expected for a watch of its size, it doesn't feel insubstantial because it's about 150 to 160 grams. The ceramic bezel is also well done. One nice thing about the bezel is that when you get to the 12 o'clock position, there's a bit of resistance, so you can tell by feel when you've completed a revolution. So the watch is listed as 42mm in diameter, but it's really the bezel that overhangs the case that gives it that size. The case itself is about 41mm, and lug to lug it's about 50mm, and it's about 14.3mm thick. And while we're over here, let's have a quick look at the recessed helium escape valve. It really helps to provide a point of interest in that side of the case. And on the other side, the crown is signed with the Tudor Shield, as you can see. And here's the watch in my 17 cm or 6 3/4 range wrist. And as I said, while the dimensions seem big in paper, it really wears much smaller than you'd think. So it's a watch that's worthwhile trying out in person if you're interested in it. Really, the only way you're going to tell if a watch is going to work for you is to try it on in the metal. And it has to be said that the dial here really works, no matter what version of the Pelagos you actually end up going for. In the normal versions, which have blue and black dials, the lume in the hands and markers is white, while on the left-hand drive you can see it's more of a Fotina colour to give the watch a retro vibe. And that's helped even more by the casino date wheel, where the odd numbers, as you can see, are black, and the even numbers, which unfortunately you can't see here, are in red. Also in the left-hand drive version, the Pelagos name is in red lettering, which really pops, I think. And the red lettering also ties this watch in quite closely with Rolex's Sea Dwellers, both the old generations and the current generation. However, is there a bit too much text on the dial? I mean, Pelagos, chronometer, officially certified, rotor self-winding, 500 meters, 1640 feet, does make the dial look a little bit too cluttered. Losing a line here might well have improved the overall look of the watch. So let's look at the clasp now. And I think this is really innovative, even though it's now about 5 or 6 years old. So as you can see, the clasp is signed on the inner portion, and so is the fastener as well. Now the clasp really is clever. So first of all, there are 3 micro adjust levels, which give you about 5mm to play with on your wrist. And you can see it's really easy to just flip between them there. But what really sets the clasp apart is the fact that it's also got a spring-driven portion, which can adjust itself on the fly to expand and contract with your wrist or your wetsuit, giving you a serious adjustment range, as you can see. And there you can see the springs. So as I currently live in a tropical environment, this is really useful. As you go from the baking heat outside to freezing air-conditioned offices. And the fact that the clasp gives you this degree of flexibility of how it's going to fit on you is really fantastic. The other feature in the clasp is a diver's extension. Not that I'll actually make much use of it probably, but as you can see, an easy push and you've got it open and it's easy to close again. Now the clasp looks aren't for everyone, but I kind of like the semi-industrial style here. After all, this is meant to be a tool watch. So to me, playing up the mechanics on the clasp just fits the watch. Onto the case back now, and one feature that's pretty cool about the left-hand drive version is that it's a limited run, not a limited edition, limited run. So what that means apparently is that all of the case backs are numbered individually. So since 2016, just over 12,000 of these beasties have been made. The case back also lets you know that the Pelagos uses Tudor's in-house movement, which is the MT5612, and that can run for about 70 hours when it's fully wound. One thing that you might notice here is that there's a lack of a quick release mechanism for the bracelet, and that makes it much harder to swap over to the supplied rubber straps or any other straps you're interested in. But do remember that it's a 22mm lug width watch. But in contrast, here's a Zila Swordfish, which is a substantially cheaper watch in titanium, but it manages to include a quick release mechanism for the bracelet. So I have to say that would be a really good feature to have in the Pelagos too. I will review the Swordfish later on as well. And now on to one of the favourite features of the Pelagos for me, which is the lume. You really do have to hand it to Tudor and Rolex. They really do good lume, with that really distinctive bluish colour that they have. So one of the nice features here is that the bezel markers are also lumed, as you can see, and that makes it really easy to use and set in the fly in the dark if you need to do so. And one thing that I've noticed with this watch is that if you actually look and follow the lume over a course of time, you can see that actually the lume as a whole fades together. So that means that you don't have just the bezel fading and then maybe the hands or the markers. Everything is going roughly at the same time, and that's really, really impressive in my opinion. Another thing to note is that the camera caught as much as it could and then it stopped recording, and the lume was still pretty much visible really easily with the naked eye. So the lume on the Tudor Pelagos is pretty good and it should last you really well at night. And here's the watch outside. Now, while the sapphire crystal does actually have some anti-reflective coating, it's maybe not the strongest anti-reflective coating you've ever seen. However, as you can see, the watch really does stay legible from a degree of angles. So even though it might not be the strongest coating, there's not really much to complain about. And back on the wrist now, and as you can see, the titanium metal gives it a different sort of flavour to steel. So the titanium gives it a sort of a darker and greyer colour than you would normally get with most steel watches. But having said that, it works pretty well for the Pelagos because it's meant to be a tool watch. So overall, I think that the titanium really suits the style of the Pelagos. So is the watch perfect? Well, no, but it gets really close. And dare I say it, it gives the Submariner a real run for its money, and it might beat the Submariner in some people's hearts. Maybe even mine. But minor niggles aside, if you're in the market for a dive watch, this is definitely one to consider. So the Pelagos costs around 4,700 USD retail. So it offers really good value for money at that price, I would say, and astounding value money if you can get a decent discount on any of the models. For me, I like the retro influenced looks of the left-hand drive, but if you like a more modern style, then the normal variants with blue and black dials with white lume really need to be considered. Well, that's the end of the review. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please hit the like button and subscribe. And until next time, thanks for watching.